Hey, this is Evans from motorcycle.com, and I am standing here next to the 2020 KTM 1290 Superduke R, or as KTM likes to call it, the Beast 3.0. And let me tell you, I've just spent an entire day riding around the hills and then the racetrack here in Portimao, Portugal. And let me tell you, when I got off the bike at the end of the track day, I couldn't speak in complete sentences. I was overwhelmed, overloaded. And why is that? Well, the Superduke R has always been a sledgehammer of a motorcycle, just torque galore. And what KTM decided to do this year was add more. So while the engine doesn't make much more horsepower, they're claiming 180 horsepower, the peak torque is now up to 103 pound-feet that they claim. And anything above 3,500, when you crack open the throttle, it is insane. On the street ride this morning, I couldn't believe it. And out here on the track later, same thing. Now, when you've got that much power, you have to do some things to control it. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. First, I want to say about what they changed. They're saying the engine is 90% new. And what they wanted to do is every part that they touched, they wanted to make sure they reduced the weight. And the total weight loss for the engine is 1 kilogram, or roughly 2.2 pounds. And that's pretty impressive when you consider that they actually added things to the engine, like the exhaust system has a second catalyzer in it. And so that would add weight to the exhaust. So for the whole engine package to be that much lighter is pretty impressive. Then they did things like added ram air to the intake. This little slot right here has always been pretty cool to look at, but now it takes air directly in to the airbox, which is also, I think, 2.7 or 2.8 liters larger than before. Once the pressurized air gets to the fuel injectors, they added shower fuel injectors over top of the throttle bodies in the airbox. What that does is it offers better fuel atomization at high RPM. They operate through the whole RPM range, but really they're most felt when you really get on the throttle at high RPM. To balance the power delivery, they rerouted the exhaust system, and because of the difference in length of the exhaust, the headers have different diameters. The front header is 54 millimeters in diameter, where the rear one is 60 millimeters, and that's because it offers less resistance over the longer distance that the exhaust gases have to travel. Naturally, with all that additional power, KTM had to control it, and they went with a 6D lean angle sensor. And what that does is, typically the lean angle sensors in other bikes have a forward and rear sensor, and then a side-to-side sensor. Now you're getting a pivoting sensor as well. And that plays into your lean-sensitive traction control, your lean-sensitive brake, ABS, all these things to keep you safe while you're on the bike. And so that's pretty cool. The chassis has been updated. The connection from the triple clamp all the way to the engine is much stiffer now. To improve the connection between the bike and the rider, KTM's engineers made the chassis stiffer between the triple clamp and the engine where it mounts to. And what that does, it gives a more direct feedback to the rider. Additionally, they raised the engine 38 millimeters in the frame to give a higher center of gravity. And what that does is it makes the bike more flickable. And so when you get in a tight series of corners, you can go side to side much easier. And it's really quite noticeable. The suspension itself is fully adjustable WP items. In the back, they made some big changes with the shock. The shock is now significantly longer. So with the new linkage, the stroke goes from 54 millimeters to 70 millimeters. So it has a longer stroke to push the oil through to control the chassis. Also, to aid in the anti-squat under acceleration, the pivot point of the swing arm was moved closer and higher in the engine. That combines with the additional stroke in the shock to decrease the amount of squat under acceleration. And what that does, it prevents the bike from running wide, exiting the corner hard on the gas. Weight savings on the bike came through in every area, from the really swoopy bodywork, which shape is designed to help with downforce at elevated speeds. What they did was they made the bodywork thinner in the middle and thicker on the edges where you needed the rigidity, and that results in lighter weight. Additionally, in the rear, there's a cast aluminum subframe, and it connects to a composite subframe. And what you get there is, well, first of all, it looks really cool. And second, it's much lighter while not sacrificing any stiffness. The riding position has changed slightly also. The pegs are in roughly the same location, but the handlebar is, the grips are further forward and a little bit lower to give you a more aggressive upper body angle to deal with the wind blast when you're accelerating. And that makes a big difference. For people that like to have their pegs a little bit higher, a nifty feature about the pegs is that you can rotate them higher by just loosening one bolt and accessing, pulling them back to suit your preferences. And that's a really cool touch. Additionally, KTM has made it possible for those that like race shift. You can switch to race shift on your shifter without having to readjust the lever. That's kind of neat. So what are my impressions after spending a day on the bike? First of all, we started out in mist and fog and drizzle, and so the road was wet, visibility was awful, and I got to tell you, the throttle control is much smoother. And this is even in just road mode, not in rain mode. And I never felt like there was any abruptness or anything like that to upset the bike in slippery conditions. Once the road got dried out, I really was impressed by the increased power in the mid-range. That torque just allows you to grunt right out of the corner. And part of that is due to the specially constructed Bridgestone S22 rear tire, which has a softer carcass, which allows it to distort and put down a bigger footprint under hard acceleration. That combined with the anti-squat really helps you hold a line in the corner. The other changes in the chassis are really important both for street riders and for people that take the Superduke R to the track day. And that is, by turning in quicker and being able to hold its line easier, you can trail brake deeper into the corner than you could with the old Duke. The old Duke wanted to stand up and run wide, whereas with this new front end, the new steering geometry and the stiffer front end, you can bend it into the corner on the brakes, which is something is really helpful when you're entering an unknown corner, like I did on every corner I entered on the street ride today. Getting this bike out on the track at Portimao was just insane. First of all, it's got a long front straight to really get up to speed. And the highest speed I saw on the front straight was 237 kilometers per hour. And I think that translates roughly to like 150. On a naked bike, that's just insane. The wind blast is pretty intense at that speed. But then braking into turn one, I was able to carry the brakes much further into the corner than I think I would have with the previous Superduke R. Yeah, I need to make a note that I never rode the Superduke R on the track, only on the street. Accelerating out of the corners, the quick shifter has been updated up and down, and it is super smooth. It's a little bit higher effort than the previous generation, but that is actually pretty nice because if you accidentally bump the shifter with your toe while moving around on the bike, you don't risk an inopportune upshift or downshift. So that was really great. The exhaust note on this bike at speed and the intake honk combined to just be really sexy while you're railing on the track. Once again, I'm speechless for how it was. I think that what KTM has done has been to refine all of its strong points. I said it's always been a sledgehammer of a motorcycle, but now it carries the same punch or even a little stronger punch, but it's more refined. And that's what you would expect from a third generation motorcycle. I can't remember off the top of my head what the US MSRP is, so we'll just put it in the video right here or right here.